What's up? Welcome to my channel. I'm the Young and Free Retiree, where we discuss all things related to finances, like retirement, traveling, and etc. Primarily through my own personal journey of navigating early retirement at 38. If you like the content, hit the like and subscribe button. If not,
get the stepping.
retirement can be full of fun times and much success, but at the same time, it can come with many failures. Y'all, today I want to come over here and talk about 3 main mistakes that I made that almost pretty much derailed my entire retirement lifestyle before it even got started. The first mistake I made going into entering retirement was poor planning. Now, everybody's heard the quote, when you fail to plan, your plan is to fail. Now, don't get me wrong. I definitely put a lot of planning into retirement. My major mistake came when I was going into retirement. I was finishing up and it was almost a surreal moment. I didn't think that day would ever come. And it's like when you're chasing something and you shoot for the moon, and when you actually hit that target, then you're kind of shocked to some degree. So I was shocked, and I never thought beyond that point what I would do. It's almost like if you hit the lottery. Like a lot of people like, yeah, I want to hit the lottery. I want to hit the lottery. But many of us, sometimes we don't properly plan on what we're going to do when we hit it. And so to me, retirement to some degree was like the lottery. Because to retire at 38, I had never seen anyone do it. Coming from my walk of life, everyone I knew from around me growing up, including my mom and friends and family, everyone worked till they were 67, 80 years old, however long. Everyone I knew, they worked up until they were old and gray. And I knew that wasn't what I wanted. So much planning went into it to get me to that point, right? Because I made it. But the thing is, I didn't plan for the day of and beyond. And so that's where the poor planning came into to play, because I just didn't know what to do. I didn't fully understand retirement. I didn't, ask around. I didn't go to any other people to do any research on retirement. I just knew I wanted it. And that's why I kind of stumbled into retirement. That was the first main mistake that I made, because lack of proper planning for retirement. Like I said, I planned to get to that point, but I never planned on what I would do when I actually get to retirement. So it was kind of mind-blowing experience for me, because it was just it was shocking. It was something you shoot for all your life, and then you finally get it, and you don't know what to do with it when you have it. So, and a lot of that mainly because I was in a point I had decided to move. So I relocated from Las Vegas to Tampa, and I just knew I was excited to be hitting retirement, no longer having to work, or at least I thought so. Anyways, my second mistake that I made was consumer debt. Now, don't get me wrong, I didn't have a lot of consumer debt like most Americans. I'm a very frugal person, but at the same time, there were still things that I possessed that maybe could have helped me slide into retirement a lot more comfortably. And possessing some of that consumer debt, which included having a car loan, it was like $25K. I had that, still paying for that, about $450 a month. I had some credit card bills, which I pay every month, but yet and still, I was just having those reoccurring things that I was using my credit card for. And what I realized is that a lot of that just added to the complexity of entering retirement, making that transition. And so it would have been a lot smoother if I had just went ahead and paid off my car loan, which I should have done on some degree. it would have just been one less thing to worry about, because when you go into retirement, you're on a fixed income, and the less expenses and bills you have, the better. Now, this third mistake that I made was really a big one for me. And I'm kind of a little bit embarrassed to say it, because all my life I never really, this wasn't a problem for me. But as I got closer and closer to retirement, I became very complacent, financially complacent. Um, I started neglecting some of the fundamental things that I was doing to get me to that point in my life. And this third mistake is that I didn't know my true numbers, my true discretionary and non-discretionary expenses every month. And one of the main reasons, like I kind of hinted at earlier in the video from mistake number one, was that I was in the process of moving. I became very complacent with my finances, and and by moving, especially all the way from Vegas to Tampa, it I didn't know what my numbers were gonna be like once I actually settled into my new location in Florida where I was retiring at. And so that really caused me some financial struggle in like the first year or so into retirement, because once again I didn't know my true numbers. So a lot of things, like, I didn't understand. I didn't know what my rent was going to be like, per se. I didn't usually, prior to retirement, I was on top of it. My finances, knowing my specific numbers. I knew I budgeted. I knew my specific, my rent, all my expenses. They were listed, and going into retirement, like I said, I became a little complacent. I was riding that high of, hey, I'm going into retirement, right? Everything's gonna be wonderful, and that really caused me to struggle that first year of retirement, because once again, I kind of, my expenses exceeded my fixed income. And that first year, I could not fully retire. I could not. I had to do a semi-retirement, and so I ended up having to work DoorDash for a bit. I ended up having to work like UPS for like 8 days, because I quit that because it was too much stairs and too much going on. So I didn't even stick around long enough to get a paycheck, honestly, at that job. But I ended up having to work some extra side jobs and side gigs, because my expenses were they exceeded my fixed income in that first year of retirement. Like, I was dealing with, my rent was like, what, I think like almost $2,000 a month, and especially in Florida. And then, and also, it was during the time when everyone was transitioning to Florida. Everyone from New York and Cali, so rent was skyrocketing, property prices was going up. I couldn't afford to buy a house or anything of that nature. It was all out of my grasp, and so I didn't have a true understanding of what my numbers were going to be when it came to my monthly expenses, like what my electricity bill was going to be, my water bill. I didn't know the cost of my internet. And granted, some of those things I could have just, like, typically internet doesn't fluctuate too much. You can go from 50 to 100, but things like, especially insurance, was one thing I definitely did not expect to be so expensive. But I came to find out in that year in Florida, like, my insurance, I think, doubled, almost tripled, going from Vegas to Florida. And it's because car insurance is so expensive in Florida. And that's one thing I didn't account for. And it just put me over the top. It put my expenses way over my income. And so the only way to supplement that was to go out and work. So going into retirement, make sure you know your numbers when you go into retirement. It will help you transition so much easier, to make your life so much just smoother going into it. And one less thing you have to worry about, because nobody wants to go into retirement where, if you have more going out the door than you have coming in. That's a terrible way to start retirement, and it makes it almost like you start out struggling. It's kind of like when you get to the boarding gate, and you're boarding gate at the airport, and you still have a lot of unnecessary baggage with you that you could have checked in prior to getting to your boarding gate. So that's kind of like with having all those extra expenses and not knowing your numbers. It kind of created that problem for me in retirement. Kind of similar to that whole the boarding gate thing. It's like getting to your boarding gate and when you boarding it because you're supposed to be relaxing and chilling when you get to your boarding gate at the airport. But if you're showing up with extra baggage and things that you could already taken care of prior to, then it just makes the experience much worse and much more of a struggle. I'm still thankful and blessed that I'm able to retire. I was able to retire at such a young age, but it just could have been smoother. And I think that's something that can be beneficial and helpful to other people out there that are either planning for retirement or what to expect during retirement. Try to avoid making these three mistakes like I did. And your retirement life, your retirement transition will be so much smoother. Always remember that life isn't about chasing more stuff, especially in retirement, but valuing what you have and desiring less.